Very good day for everyone. In this video, we will do a step-by-step of how to perform the real-time database configuration in FlutterFlow. Then initially, we will create a project. And here is the configuration of the project. Then it is important to have a ground. Note that we will need Firebase already configured, and we will need, obviously, the FlutterFlow account to perform the different tests. It is also important to clarify that we will use a little code of Dart, including some bookstores of Flutter, to be able to connect it to Firebase, that is to real-time. Then I will change a little here. I want to put it like that, Ubisoft, and it will be called my application, my project. As such. Tapita in my project too. Here I enable, I will say yes, I want configure Firebase. And here tells me to enter the project ID of the project. I will create a project ID new. Ready? Let's go here. Add project. Let's add a new project. We're going to call Tapita. Ready? We're going to continue. Here if we want to enable Google Analytics, we say yes, no problem. We select the account and we're going to create the project. Let's wait a while. I'm going to pause and I'll be back. Ready. Now, our project is created and we will give it to continue. These steps are important because we are going to need several configurations. Here we're going to tell you that we are going to work with Android to select our platform. Ready. In this case, we will not use the SHA-1, but if you are going to use some additional configurations, such as, for example, messages, push of applications or other applications, this SHA-1 is important to do it. Same here. There are all the features and the process that they must take to generate this SHA-1. Ready. Let's then put the name of our application, which we already had in this element. Here. Right, let's give us a little back so we can see our package again. Ready. We will put here our package, the name of the application, Tapita app. Ready. Then we're going to go to Register App. Voila. So here it tells us Register App. Voila. Then we're going to tell you to Register App. What you're going to do is generate the configurations. In this case, asks us to skim the JSON. We don't need it. Already that we're working with FlutterFlow, and he's doing it automatically from behind. Okay? Here also tells us then, what do we want to work on? So I don't eat fast, we're not going to do anything. Well, in the case you want, if you have a waslog winks or fan something, in this case, simply that. To do nothing, since we will work directly with flowers flow in next and end up going to the console ready, and we are in our console here. We will give you the next step, and here we will need the ID project, where we find that ID project here in project configuration, ready. And here we see the ready project ID. This would be the ID project. We will copy it, and we will save. This is here tells us that if we believe we want authentication, and that if we want user collection, this we're going to tell you yes. And if we are going to do this to be able to connect directly to Firebase, and that it does not throw any error, then we are going to give it what our home is made of. And we are going to create a blank one called home ready. And here we are going to give it another, which is going to be, for example, data, or well, or I don't know, my primary and such. Ready? Then ready we have that. We are going to say connect. Now then it tells us it cannot connect. It does not have access because it is not added to Flow2Flow. As a project editor, this happens because we see in accounts user add EA. In users and permissions. Sorry, add here the email of Flow2Flow ready, which is the one that tells us here. So I'm going to copy this email. Is found here, flow2flow.io, and we're going to put it here. I think I missed an fFilebase.flow ready. He will be editor, and we are going to tell him that ready is fine and add member. We're going to verify that he can have access to our project. We connect effectively. You already have access to our project. Let's tell you that Genus automatically lost files. This would basically be the JSON who asked us in the previous part, the for us to download, and please add to our project here. This is generating the different files of configuration in our FlutterFlow project. Ready, we will link this here start building listo. It is also important to enable what has to do with the part of the accounts H connection ready in our project. Entonces, vamos a ir an authentication. Let's go to Decil that we're going to start the part of authentication, and is important enable email already that this is where you're going to connect our application of FlutterFlow to our project ready well. Since we are here, then we already have connection with our database. Here is the of users, which is, let's say, how the list base this, as we are not going to use it. But then let's say what is basically the connection. What are we going to do? Then we will make the connection Firestore. Vamos a habilitar Firestore also, listo. Here we hope in case the internet drops a bit, we are going to enable this. We're going to leave it here. We are going to say in test mode so that we can connect without having to log in directly. And that allows us both to access and create data, such as posting data or modifying data. Ready. Good, then we would already have our Firestore. Now let's create our real-time database, which is the one we are going to start interacting with. Ready. This is important to create it, since, well, these are the elements that will allow us to upload and download data. Ready. Sorry, the internet is a bit slow, so let's wait a bit. Ready. It's loaded. Now let's create our database. We will tell it that yes, next in test mode also ready, and we enable it properly. Important also to take into account that in Firebase, it also asks us to enable other elements. So for example here, please disconnect. Ready here, already we have our project. It tells us that we have to deploy. Now we are going to do this. We are going to wait here. In the meantime, while that loads, we're going to create our application ready. We are going to create something very simple, by the way, a moment where we are simply going to receive a data, and we are going to that, it listens to another data. Ready. Then in our main column, we are going to add a text. And this text is going to generate that data arrives ready through from the verification of the real-time database. Then when we connect, we verify ourselves. It starts to send, let's say like data, every time they change from the server. This is going to help us a lot because to have the data basically in real time, we are also going to add here one button. This button is the one that will generate the configuration of our database so that when we connect, then that database of real time remains connected and begins to send us information when this changes to update. I'm going to make this a little bigger to have a vision much more. The button, and also we are also going to update that data. Ready. Then I'm going to send here. I'm going to use a text file here. It is. We're going to use one of these to be able to send the data ready. Here we're going to send the data we need. Okay, good. So here what we're going to do then, let's start adding the different elements. So it's important to have in mind the following for us to start configuring these elements. We're going to need a variable to be able to access it and start exchanging data. In this case, I'm going to create a variable of app state in app values, which is a state variable of the application. This application state variable is, let's say, complete and comprehensive throughout my application. You can also create variables that only interact with the screen in which we are ready. Then that It's also important to keep in mind in this case, for practicality, I'm going to do it in app state. I'm going to create a variable here. I'm going to say, for example, that it will be called name. And this is the one I'm going to start updating, ready, and create. So we already have our variable of state. This means that it will be on all our screens. I'm going to link the hello world, that is, this text, with this variable that I just created, ready. So in app state, I will have the name ready, perfect in this label. I'm going to do, when I press enter on this label, I will update the value, and that value will arrive and update the name, ready for them to see the sending and receiving of the data. We are now going to start, so now with our custom code ready, let's create our code in order to start generating. Well then, in this case, I'm going to change the name. It will be called RTR call to make my data arrive there, which is the call to my data friends ready. I will say that I believe it. Well, I missed something. We need to add the dependencies. Very important. In this case, the dependency we are going to use is the Firebase database ready. This dependency is the one that will generate for us that connection with the database, real time. Since by default, FlutterFlow does not bring it. So that's how we'll have it, to add directly where you can get it on puff.dev ready. You can enter on puff.dev. And on this page, you will find all the libraries that are associated with Dart ready. And well, in Flutter, you can also find them like that. You can search for the ones you need there and add them to the project. You have to take into account that in the background, this is working with Dart. So well, clearly we are going to have Dart code, and we can import exactly what we would have in Flutter ready. I'm going to tell him that our project creates us. That creates us, our name is there. And we go to add our library that we just imported, which would be the Firebase database one. Ready. This library is this one here. Ready this library. Well, it takes a little while. The library is added and all that. For the moment. Don't worry if an error is thrown. Ready, let's continue. Good in the BTD. What call are we going to make when this function is called with a button? Let's consider that it is a custom action, meaning an action ready. We are going to tell it to start adding to our project and start creating our application. Important list to keep in mind something, and it's the following. We are going to have different instances of each of our connections to Firebase. On one hand, we are going to have the connection, since we made that connection, is the one we have in Firebase, and another is the connection we are going to create in our project. In this sense, ready. Then we are going to have two instances. Then we are going to create our instance as our instance is created. Then first we are going to create our await ready. We are going to enter Firebase. Firebase. I'm getting autocomplete here ready. Firebase point initialize app. This is going to create for us an initialization of our application ready. Then we have to obviously create our application initialization. And basically, we are going to need another instance of Firebase so that it can connect. Let's say it's another path. And we have two paths. One that is the one we set up in the project for Firestore, and another one that we are going to set up in the real-time database ready. Then here we have to give it a name, ready to our project. In this case, we can name it whatever the secondary ready. And this, well, clearly would be like a string. Now what we have to do is create our next element, which would be the options. The options are the different choices that we're going to have in our database to be able to configure it here. Ready. Then those options will come from a data type that we will have in Firebase, which is the Firebase options ready, and we are going to create ready. Then within this Firebase options. If we give control space, all will appear, the different elements that we're going to add. For the moment, we only add the ones that are mandatory, which in this case would be the API key, the app ID, messaging sender ID, project ID. Those would be the mandatory ones. Ready. We are going to add those. I'm going to leave it here. We're going to add each one of them. In this case, I'm going to put it like this so that it allows us to generate the other list, and we are going to add them. All right. This is important. Without these data, it will not work for us, our application, and we are going to have errors. So it's important that you add them to your project. Ready. From where then? Where do we get all this data? Perfect. All this data we are going to get directly from our Firebase, then the API key. The API key. We're going to go to our project that is not finished loading for a strange reason. Good. So let's go to our project configuration, and here we will find some data that they ask us for. First, the API key. The API key is for the connection to our database, real-time ready, which is this one here. So let's try to create it ready again in testing. Suddenly my internet went down for a moment, and that's why it didn't load. Here we have then our real-time ready. Here we have our rules and usage and everything. Ready, good. So backup usage extensions, we are going to have everything ready. In this case, the API key is the one we're looking for. Ready, this API key, we are going to get it from here. We're going to get integration service stories, ready. I forgot where, from here. Database secrets, ready. Show this project the same, I'm going to delete it. So well, this secret, no, it doesn't matter. If they see it, the app ID, this app ID, we are going to take it out of here, which would basically be the project. Like such of us, who would this be ready? Let's use this come. The message sender ID this. We are going to take out the little number from this one here. Ready, although, well, this number comes from elsewhere. Oh, well, from Cloud Message. This is to have it enabled. The part of receptions of real-time data can be used, for example, for the messaging part, or rather the push messages. Ready, but then in this case, we are going to copy this. We're going to put it here, and the project ID. This project ID is our project, that in this case, we also find it here, which is this project ID ready. We already have it. Well, something important that we are missing. Here to configure, and without this, we won't be able to do anything, is the URL of our project database, URL. This data from this database data, because we need the URL to be able to connect, and the URL of our real-time database where we found it here at the top, is this. We simply copy and paste our database. Ready, then we would already have our project configuration, okay? Then we have this. This would be our element semicolon, and ready. This would then be our project configuration. We already have here our configuration for the project of Firebase real-time database. We have already created our instance. Ready. Now we have to start using it here. Ready. Then for using it, we are going to use the following. We are going to create an end. We are going to call our object. We are going to call, for example, secondary. We call it secondary only. And this is going to be the same here. To Firebase. Period. We are going to create our app instance, right? And we are going to pass the name of our application. Well, of our instance that we created, which in this case will be called secondary. This is to be able to identify them. Ready in secondary app. Then we are going to call our secondary app ready. And we are going to start creating our plan. we are going to create to make the reference. Then we are going to create an element of database reference. That is the one that will take out our reference to be able to use it. It must be like, I got disconnected from the internet. Possibly I didn't capture myself in the libraries. I'm going to save here. I'm going to copy this game, and I'm going to reload the page, possibly as it expanded to the internet. At some point, the page doesn't charge. Well, we will wait for the code to load. Indeed, I do not save any element because I go with the internet. Then we have to start everything again. We will add our bookstore here, which is the Firebase database. Let's go to Agrigorla. Here is your key. Here we already have our bookstore. This will be called here. It'll be called RTD.cal because it is my call. Here is our element. Fine, then we will continue here. We will use the database reference element to be able to remove the reference element. This you will give me, for example, RTD only, equal to my instance. Ready, I must call my instance. That would be Firebase, ready, database, period, ask my instance, ready. In this case, my instance is going to be from where, since from my app, true, and what my name will be app, well, secondary, which in this case is here, secondary, ready. And I'm going to request the reference, then network point, ready. And what you're going to do is ask me for the reference of that database to be able to use it. Voila, here you're telling me you still can't find, ready. Never mind, let's save. Let's check, and right now we see if it works for us. Voila, Firebase, database, the instance, secondary, the reference, and already ask for the reference. Now I can use this reference, RTD. So I'm going to generate the on value. This is to be able to create the listener as the listener of all my database changes. Ready. In this case, I'm going to have a database event. Who is the one who will receive me that event? Voila, I will call that event, and then I will to use that element that enters to be able to generate my data output. In this case, I'm going to call on event snapshot voila, value, and this is going to be map type. Voila, that is it's going to be basically a JSON. Voila. Now we're going to go for the FF app state element. This that we had already created it before, remember, was the element that we created in this part. Let's create it, ready. And we will access that variable. In this case, the variable, we call it a name, smart. And we are going to tell you that it will be the same, who. Well, on our date, as it is a JSON, because we are going to access its elements, we have not still created those elements. Therefore, it generates the error there. However, well, we're going to leave it here. And then in our final time database, we're going to create an element. We're going to call it, for example, that it's called name. Voila. And we're going to put the value here. So let it be July. Ready? Good. Then we already have listo. Well, then here we are going to put my key with its respective element. Then here it would be a name. Well, you have to take into account, because if they want this ref, I can pass it on, some kind of data to go directly to the element that I want. Obviously, if my database is very large, because I will have that reference directly to that item for me to get down in the whole tree. That is the database. Presto, here, here. It tells me like this. I'm missing something at some point. I think there is a semicolon. Oh, okay, there is a semicolon. Where has the face of the area of the TVB alphabet found us? Oh, okay, it's just that I stayed misspelled. Now it let me save. Let's try to compile and see if the compilation of the 2021 organ table has been successful. Well, an understanding from RTDB call. The code gives me no errors or throws any error. This would then be to generate my instance, right of the connection with Firebase, generate my reference, and put a listener. In this case, this listener will receive everything that this instance has, or everything that my database has, and I'm only taking the value that is from data nom, and I'm saving it in point nom, that this point nom is in my app state that is located here. Well, this would be for only that part. Let's call it now. Let's go to my page. I'm going to go here to button. I'm going to create my action. I'm going to generate my custom action. And here is RTD call means that when I press this button, it will generate that connection to that database. Ready. Now I'm going to call this text here, and I'm going to change it. It's already with my name, which is mine. App state means that every time it changes, it will generate that ready. Now I said that in this text field, I was going to write some value. It was going to update in the database, and automatically it should also update here. Ready. So let's go for it. Let's do that. Then in the custom, we're going to create another custom. 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 In this case, my code is well written to the dependencies. Well, let's create then another custom. Then this custom action is going to be the one that is going to send the data to the database. I'm just going to follow that it creates me here. Neither function scene, now here, that we're going to need in this scene is also going to need the database ready. In this case, it is not necessary to import the file again. Database, since that addition made in RTD call is generating for me, let's say the global, that same database. Then here we go to call our already created element, and this to create our reference to take into account that obviously first the RTD call has to be generated so that this RTD call already has this element created. If it doesn't have it created, well, the send call will not work for me. So let's create here a final. It will be called secondary because it will be my app, and we can call it in any other way, call it in another way, so that we see the difference, RTD2, which, well, really won't affect me at all. Ready Firebase period, and here we are going to pass the reference to our database, which in this case as we call it, is important that the name always remains the same. Let's go to return, and here we call it secondary. So that will be my base of instance. So that will be my instance of the real-time database secondary. It's important to reference the same. Ready here, I'm going to take my reference database reference, which will be the element, I will call it RTDB ref, for example, to indicate that it is the reference. And here I'm going to generate my Firebase database dot, and I'm going to generate the same instance for the same app colon, and then I'm going to pass my element, which in this case I called it RTDB2. Here I'm going to pass my reference, which would be row, and generate my element. In this case, this is where I want to point. So in this case, I want to point to where the name is ready. So I'm going to write it here, name, I'm ready. I'm pointing my reference to the name. Now that I'm going to say it, well, what am I going to point to the name? I'm going to point to the name now that I'm going to say it. Well, what am I going to set that value, then await to be able to send it? In this case, it would be rtd.ready.set, and I'm going to set the value. So what value am I going to set here? Well, I'm going to set the value that will come from my text field, but at no time did I tell it to be that value. Sorry, I missed the string here. And let's give it a value that is going to be the one that will receive it. It is important here to add that field. Value, and it's of type string, and it will not be nullable. It will always have a ready element. Well, then here we can already review. We can see that we are calling the same instance from the other side. We can see that we are accessing the name, which is basically our element. If we have more, all we do is put a bar, ready, the for loop. Let's verify that our code is well written with this element. What we do is compile it. Good. So with that, we can verify that indeed we are creating our element, and we can already generate an element in this way. Our element, and we can already generate an element in this way. We can generate that data, copy this again, and I will refresh my page because the internet, I don't know what's going on, but it's very crazy. Ready here is the descent call. It means that I got there. I'm going to take everything I had copied and I'm going to save. Oh well, it tells me that the parameters don't match. Indeed, the value here is not null. I'm going to save again, and it's saved now. So here it is. Checking. It says that I have a warning in the Firestore rules. In this case, I'm not going to pay attention because we are not working on Firestore ready. So now let's verify if everything works. We are going to go to our screen. Here in this one, we are obviously going to create our action. Ready, this text field, we're going to create our action. So add action on submit. Submit is when we press enter. When we send that element, we are going to add our custom action, ready, which is descent call. And notice that descent call is already for me, ask for a parameter, which was the same parameter that we already created. Ready, so let's go here. Page parameters, window state, and here we are going to have the text field, which is the label here, that one there. Ready. It's important. As advice, let's change the name of the elements so that you can refer directly to the element you want to modify. In this case, we can call it, for example, sense data field, for example, so important. That is a good practice. Ready. Well, so now let's go another our action. We're going to tell that our widget state and send data. Ready, we have it here now. We have it loaded. We have our button and we have our element ready. Let's verify if this really works. I'm going to generate here my application. Obviously, the simulator, this takes 2 to 3 minutes. So I will pause for a moment and I'm back ready. We are back. Our application has finished compiling and is now opening our item. This, for those who do not know, is also important in some cases to set some breakpoints. Ready. When you create breakpoints or create different elements to be able to see in the console, and for example, to some of these, we add a print. So let's do it so you can see it in RTDB call. Let's put a print as soon as we enter our action. Ready. So let's create a print. We're going to put it initialize my RTDB ready. Let's save our code. Ready. Let's update our page because we changed our code a little, and you will notice that we can use the same browser console ready to be able to see the breakpoints that we are putting in our code. Ready, that's important to carry, as in where it goes, my code, and then put debug. Ready, here it's already. So all of this, I'm going to delete everything, ready, and I'm going to click here where it says button, and notice that indeed it generated me the output to initialize my RTDB. But it tells me that there is something wrong. It is that it's a running. The convoke error is of null type, and it is not an error. It is an error. it cannot be of superstring type. So it means that I have here an error referring to must be then my register. Which part of the code does not tell me which part ready. I'm going to I'll stop and check what the issue is, and then I'll be with you. Well, then the error that was being generated was basically the database. The database. Here, the permissions were set to false, and clearly it wasn't going to let me write, read, or do absolutely anything in the database of data. Then the error that was generating was that problem ready. So it is always important to review the rules of your databases in order to verify that they are being complied with according to what you need. Ready, then simply they were the rules of the database. Clearly it was not letting me connect, and here is what generated the error. Ready, that was why. Because of the database rules ready. So now we have the application. In this case, as you can see, we have name, button the same, ready. And what are we going to do? Well, we are going to start. So we are going to connect here. Then we are going to generate this error. Look, I have not pressed the button, right? So let's put, for example, here, hello, and look, it generates an error for me. Why? Well, because clearly our object has not been created. So it is important to create the instance first before being able to generate some data shipment ready. Let's then create the instance on button ready, and it will automatically generate that alert. Ready. Here, this of my name should change. When I select the element, it changes ready. This is simply the handling from the states. So if you want, then you can already make it so that automatically they change according to the data ready. So for example, here we are going to say end, and as soon as I hit enter, automatically it updates. And we can see that here in our database, this is the end. Let's change another one. Let's put, I don't know, Pepito enter, change Pepito right away. Here it is ready. And we can do anything else here, right? Do any other thing and enter. And effectively updates the value for us. It must be taken into account that this value is being updated from Firebase. That is, this value that I write here is sent with the enter key to Firebase, and Firebase, when this value changes, it notifies us to my listener to change this one here. Ready? That's here. Then, self-call. So let's finish to leave it at 40 minutes. First, I need to have the instance created. In this case, I take a reference for my instance, in this case by name, and send the value that is in my text field, call receiving a parameter called value, right? And when I create my database, I basically create my listener, that every time it is generated, the change in the database, it updates the value for me in the variable. Application status named name, ready. That's basically it. As you can see, the code is not very complex. It's easy. You have to consider that. Well, in this case, many other security features would be missing and all that. But well, let's say the connection part and being able to handle the data are already there. That would be another process to generate all the security part of security. So that would be all. I hope you liked it and that you can use it in your projects and anything. So thank you very much for the attention given. Have an excellent day and see you later.